This is VikesNow. This will be the final correspondence of the week. I am heading to Cincinnati this week to watch Vikings-Bengals. First, however, I'm here with Josh Frey, our weekly Wednesday guest, the boss over at PurplePTSD. How you been? How'd that 3-0 dub treat you?
Hey, I mean, from a defensive perspective, couldn't have gone much better for us. So I'll take a win whenever we can get it. How you been doing?
Not bad. I notably thought of this example after the Vikings beat the Bears 19-13, which sparked a 5-game win streak. You were the example that I've used on multiple shows. You messaged me, direct text message my phone. It said, somehow I feel worse about winning that game than I do losing to the Chiefs. I want to know, I felt that way too against the Bears. However, beating the Raiders, albeit 3-0, to me, didn't feel like that. I felt great about it. I was like, all you need to do is win to keep it alive. Did you feel that way? And if you did, was that because we have backup quarterbacks and winning by any means necessary is acceptable?
I did feel that way. I have a very similar feeling about that game to you. And I think a lot of it just has to do with how much this defense has proven over the past month or so during that 5-game win streak. And even during some of these losses, like the defense has just been absolutely incredible. And I didn't really necessarily think we could say that about the early portion of the season, like against the Chargers, they got gashed. The Chiefs game didn't necessarily go all that great. So I think just the body of work that the defense has proven that they can put together over this past couple months has kind of just made me feel like, yeah, this is just kind of the Vikings team that we're going to get this year. The defense is going to do what they have to do in order to get the wins, and the offense just has to do enough. So, yeah, I come out of that game feeling pretty damn good about myself and this Vikings team.
The last time the defense was not good was week 3 against the Chargers, when I know Justin Herbert had 400 something yards. They kept doing the same slant little route to Keenan Allen. And, even on this show, we do it weekly. You and I talked about how it would be really cool if Brian Flores could make it about 16th best in terms of points allowed. And then you'd let Jefferson and Cousins and Addison and the rest of the guys do the thing. And now we have the opposite. We have no Cousins, and we have a defense that by every metric available to man is like they rank number 5, DVOA, EPA per play, points allowed. So yeah, we're going to see if Nick Mullens has the special sauce to for some foreshadowing here. We're going to talk about him, see if he has a special sauce to do the thing. But every week we're on pins and needles about something with the Vikings, whether it's, who's going to be the quarterback coming out of the bye? Is Jefferson ready to come off of IR? And this week, it's again Justin Jefferson's injury status. So for the Vikings perspective and then the fantasy football managers nationwide, do you think he will play?
I think he will, just because it kind of seems like they were able to avoid any kind of serious injury. Like, obviously, anything involving the chest is probably not going to be a joke at all. Like, this isn't really just he's getting dinged up a little bit. But I do think, considering the fact that the Vikings are 7-6, they need to keep pushing in order to make the playoffs. Like, they're sitting in that number 6 seed right now, but we've seen that lead in the playoff race dwindle before. We could definitely see it again if they get handed a couple losses here in the next couple weeks. So I do think they need to just keep the onus on and keep winning these games. And this kind of, considering how that 2021 game against the Bengals went, it kind of seems like it might be a little bit of a revenge game for Justin Jefferson going up against his old collegiate teammate, Jamar Chase, all the storylines going into that game. And then just the fact that he kind of had a pretty moderate output in that game in 2021 with only 5 catches, 71 yards, which we see him put up in a quarter on a regular basis nowadays. So I do think he's going to play just because he's a competitive guy. The Vikings need to win this game. And with Nick Mullens, I kind of do feel like he's going to be able to get him the ball at least a little bit more regularly, a little bit more accurately than we saw with Dobbs last weekend. So I do think he's going to play this week.
I don't know if you saw it last night. The Vikings posted a video of Jefferson and Osborne going Christmas shopping with a couple kids and their moms. It was really cool. And one kid doing the Lord's work, point blank asked him, "Hey, are you playing Saturday?" And Jefferson, "Yeah, I'm playing."
Yeah.
So, I'm wondering if that was a tidbit or if he was just doing a rah-rah thing because it was Christmas shopping. But yeah, the guy said he was playing. When you talked about the number 6 seed and how quickly that can be vanished, 13 teams at the moment are either 7-6 or 6-7. And I think that's what Tom Brady meant when he's like, "Oh, now that I'm not playing, there's so much mid quarterback play. So many of these teams are stacked next to mediocrity." All right, Jefferson. I think he will play too. I don't know if it'll be 100% of the snaps. Like they didn't have him on the first play last week. That was a little weird. But I think he will ultimately play. It's weird that we don't know anything about it besides chest injury. Because if it was a rib, it would say rib. I don't know if it was a lung thing when he got smacked by Marcus Epps, but odd to be sure. Jordan Addison, in my opinion, was quietly minimized when Joshua Dobbs was in the lineup. It was like Dobbs didn't quite have the skill set to routinely target Addison. Do you think that Addison, with or without Jefferson, can roar back with a guy like Mullens? And is that why Mullens is the QB1?
I think he can, just because it felt like the Vikings were trying to get him the ball with Dobbs at quarterback. Like, especially look at that Bears game. They had a couple deep passes to him that just didn't work out. And I think with a guy like Mullens, who is known for just whipping the ball downfield and hoping for the best more often than not, and whether that's good or bad. So I do think that he can definitely be a little bit better than he was over the past few weeks with Dobbs at quarterback. And I don't necessarily know if it's going to be like some huge outbreak game like we saw. That if you look at just a couple of weeks ago where he's had a couple of huge games this season. I don't necessarily know if we're looking at like 150 yards, a couple touchdowns or something, but I do think he can be a little bit more involved in this offense with Mullens at the quarterback spot.
And if Jefferson indeed plays, the majority of snaps, they don't need Addison to have 150. They need him to have about 60 to 80, and then maybe a touchdown. That'll do the trick. A fabulous rookie stat line it would be. So yeah, I agree, because it seemed like as much as we tried to, after Dobbs started to regress, well, we're like, get him on the move. If he's not going to throw outside the numbers, he's going to have to run a little bit. And it seemed like he really couldn't get that going. And then he certainly couldn't feed wide receivers. He loved TJ Hawkinson. That worked quite well. But yeah, then the Cinderella story ran out. On the defense, you led at the top of the show with that. And it's just like, it kind of just slapped us in the face. All of a sudden, we're like, this defense isn't just being good against bad teams. It's straight up good. So where does this Vikings defense rank among the recent ones? Let's say with the start of the Mike Zimmer era. 2017 is the cream of the crop. 2018 was really good. People don't give it enough credit. They just assume that it wasn't because it wasn't 2017. But stack the current defense, like, is it equivalent to 2019, equivalent to 2015? Where does it rank?
Yeah, so this was a really interesting question, and I spent most of the morning just going over all the stats and everything going into this defense. So really excited to talk about this. But I like you said, I do think that 2017 is definitely the cream of the crop. Like it's going to be tough to top that one, ranking first in points allowed, first in yards allowed, amongst the league leaders, EPA, pretty much everything. They were at the top of the league. So it's going to be tough to knock that one off the pedestal. And then I might get some flack for this, but I do think that 2019 I'd put ahead of this group too. Just because that defense was kind of similar to this one in terms of statistics and everything, but they had that it factor where they could create turnovers at any given moment. Like they had 31 takeaways in that season, almost 2 per game. And you put that together and you have the possibility of that team just changing field position, flipping momentum on any given play. I do think that team has to be ranked a little bit above this one, but I'm putting this one right in the same sort of range as like 2015, 2016, 2018, where the defenses were solid and they made the right plays. They weren't necessarily the explosive type of playmakers making game-changing plays that we've seen from those 2017, 2019 teams. But I'm going to put this one in third, considering the fact that this offense has been turning the ball over like crazy all season long. Bottom 4 in turnovers still. Like obviously they didn't have any last Sunday, but it's been an ongoing issue all season where they're just trying to hand opponents points. And like you look at teams like 2015, 2016, that wasn't necessarily an issue with them. Like 2015, they were 4th in turnovers. Like they didn't turn the ball over at all. So I think you add that element of the defense just this year being able to, whatever situation that the offense gives them, they're able to answer the challenge and really just rise up to the occasion and force opponents to take field goals instead of getting touchdowns. I think that there has to be something to be said of that. So I'm putting this one right at third. And if Marcus Davenport was available, if Jordan Hicks was still around, I think this team has a chance if they were able to make a few more of those explosive plays like we saw in 2019 with the turnovers and everything. I think that this one had a chance to potentially rise up to maybe number 2, but right now I'm putting them at number 3.
There was only one thing wrong with the 2019 defense, and it's that it wasn't quite as good as 2017 or 2018. It started to sputter.
Yeah.
And when we look back on it, we think that it wasn't as good as 2017, and therefore we just don't put it in the cream of the crop. But it was very good. And if you could have had that in 2020 or 2021, you would have loved it. So yeah, the 2019 defense gets a bum rap. 2016 was really good too, especially for the first half of the season. That defense created turnovers. And fast forward to this season, that little stat, really cool stat with Kevin O'Connell still intact, the undefeated when you don't lose the turnover battle. Which, I mean, it was in your face against the Raiders. Like, there was no better example. Just win it by a whisker, and you're gonna win like with only 3 points scored at all. All right, Jake Browning will be the QB1. A total rejuvenation for that team. I got my Bengals tickets when they were still in the toilet. When Burrow got hurt and the first Browning game, he didn't look like much. I was like, how much is it going to be to go to the Bengals game? And I was like, oh, wow, these are really affordable, especially compared to Vegas. So I pounced. Then they got good, and I'm thinking, all right, we're going to go there and watch them lose probably. But I want to know from you, because you presumably remember Browning from University of Washington. Is this last 2 game sample sustainable for him, or is he right in the middle of a Dobbsian honeymoon?
I mean, you look at it, and obviously Browning's been playing tremendous football. He's a really great story considering where he started at the NFL with the Vikings on that practice squad, and he went 5 seasons without getting a start, and now he's just putting up 30 points like it's nothing. But it kind of makes more sense for him to be having this run over the past 2 weeks than it did for Dobbs when he started with the Vikings. Like, you look at the opponents that these two teams have faced, like Indianapolis and Jacksonville, like, they're not the worst defenses in the world by any means, but they're among the bottom 10 in terms of yards allowed. They're among the bottom 12 in points allowed. They're hovering right around the middle in EPA. So they're nothing special, and they've really rode their offenses towards being in their playoff positions more than they have with their defenses. Whereas you look at the Vikings and Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, those teams have absolutely ridden their defenses to get to where they are this season in terms of their potential playoff hopes rather than the offense. So Browning's been playing great football, but I think that this is going to be the real test to see whether or not it's truly sustainable for Cincinnati, because you look at what he did against Pittsburgh, and that defense isn't even necessarily as good as this Vikings defense. And he didn't really have a great game. He had like 200 yards, interceptions. They only put up 10 points in that game. So I think this is a true litmus test for Browning and these Bengals to see if they really have the chops to make a playoff run this season. So we'll see, I guess. I mean, it makes sense because of their playmakers and everything. I think he's in a really good position, similar to any kind of quarterback that's going to be in with the Vikings, like Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkins, and Jordan Addison. Those guys are among the top of the leagues at their position. So I think that Browning can potentially make the playoffs, but this is the big test this weekend.
Do you think Browning and Mullens at this point in time are the Spider-Man meme, or would you rather have one over the other if you got to pick this weekend?
I'd definitely rather have Mullens because,
okay.
Yeah, he's at least got a proven body of work over the past few seasons. Like, definitely more starts. He's had more. He doesn't necessarily have more team success, but you look at those 49ers teams that he was playing with, they weren't really all that great. So I don't really think we've gotten a chance to see him in a truly great offense, or at least one as good as what this Vikings offense can be with at least a competent quarterback. So I think I'd rather have Mullens this weekend.
All right, so we're winding down the show. For prediction's sake, I'm leaning on cynicism here, and I hate to do it. I don't think the Vikings will win back-to-back road games at AFC opponents. They've never done that, like in a 2-week span. And they're not in desperation mode. If they lost 3-0 to the Raiders, this would be an elimination game close to mathematically. But truth be told, if the Vikings lose at the Bengals, it's not doomsday. That playoff math will dip back down to about 50%, chiefly because the last weekend, all the other games went perfect for the Vikings. Down the line, everything you, a Viking fan, wanted to happen to the Rams and the Packers, all the shit happened. So if the Vikings lose to the Bengals and then clip 2 off of the Packers and Lions, they're probably going to the postseason. So I think, regrettably, I think the Bengals will win 23-20. What's your prediction and why?
See, I'm kind of going the opposite way here. I think
Yeah,
they are
good.
going to win this weekend on the road. I think I'd probably lean like 24-17 for the victory this weekend. And then I think that there's no way that they're winning 3 in a row down the stretch of the year. It's something Vikings-esque is going to happen, whether it's the following week against the Lions or week 17 against Green Bay. One of those 2 games is just not going to go the Vikings way because that's just what happens to the Vikings. So I think that they're going to win this weekend and drop one of those final 2.
Okay, so let's see. If they're going to drop one of those, do you think it would be with something on the line in week 18 at the Lions, or do you think they're going to confusingly drop one of the home games?
I think they're going to drop one of the home games, honestly. I kind of think it's going to be that Packers game. They're going to be – the Packers are going to be angry after that loss to the Giants, and they're going to try to get back on track. They have to win one of these games over the next couple of weeks in order to hopefully, for their sake, make the playoffs at least. And then I kind of feel like that Lions game on the road might end up being a nothing burger with Detroit potentially sealing the division and probably not catching one of the 49ers or the Cowboys for those top 2 seeds. So I think that the Vikings might end up playing backups in that game anyway, so it might not matter as much. So yeah, that's kind of where I see it.
There is a strong recent Vikings tradition of the final game of the year somehow meaning nothing. Whether or not it's the Vikings are already locked in, or it's basically the Bears. The Bears just aren't very good. And even in the rare examples where it's the inverse, the game still doesn't mean much. So we shall see if that continues. All right, sir. Good. You picked the Vikings. I offset it. Damn it, picking the Bengals by 3. We will be back on this show talking about whatever happens, probably Tuesday. And then the day after, we'll talk to you heading into Lions Week, which will be a Christmas Eve showdown, correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
All right,
holiday
man.
season.
Hell yeah. We'll talk to you in a week. All right.
Sounds good, man. See you then.
All right. Take it easy.